Hi, I'm Dennis Rood with Cathedral Stone. I wanted to give a little information on changing colors on site because sometimes this happens to you. You've got a limestone, Indian limestone, this color. Patch came in, maybe you didn't send for a color match, maybe the color match was off, maybe the application was different, high humidity, any of those things can lighten the color. This obviously doesn't match. So mixing on site seems to confuse people, but I'm going to show you it's easy. This is the material that we use to put this patch in. It's our M70 line, it's S1LS. That's the color you see there. Anybody on any job would complain about that because it's not a close enough color match. So what do? These are some of our other materials. We have dozens and dozens of these colors. So I chose some other M70 samples, slightly different shades of brown. I think this needs some brown added in. How do you do it? What I normally start with is, let's say 90% of the original mix that's too light, and we want to make it a little browner, a little bit darker. So choose whichever one you think. I think I'm going to start with this one. I'll put these two aside and mix these. You have to measure. Hard to get construction guys to slow down to measure, but this is the easiest way to do it. I'm going to do a 90-10 percentage. 9 of these teaspoons and 1 of the other color. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And 1 of these. That gives us a 90-10 ratio. Let's see what that little bit of yellow and brown do to this. So the idea is the same as when you're staining. I don't think that's enough brown, but you start out with a low amount and work up into the color match. Because these are mortars, they're going to take a few days to dry. I'm going to put on a series of these today, and then we'll come back in a day or two and see which one comes closer, and we may fine-tune it from then. But the other important thing about this is to keep track of what you're doing. Mix number 1 is 9 parts S1LS and 1 part S2LS. You need this for when you find the right color, the one you want to use, you want to make a 5-gallon pail of it, you've got to use that same ratio. So if I mix these two together, I don't know if you can see that. Let's see what that looks like with water. These are not going to be very big. I don't need them to be big. Don't get this too wet. Too much water lightens the color. It does it with all cement mixes, all mortar mixes. So also work your way into the right water content. Gradually ramp up until you get it the way you want it, but don't overdo it. Then you'll have to go back and add more mortar. This is just a touch dry. Okay, we're in good shape here. Put a little bit of water here. We don't have any bonding agents in these products, so don't let anybody do that, thinking it's the only way it's going to work. You don't need those. There's the what we call a peanut butter coat. That's what makes it stick. And then this one. Always put samples onto stone, some kind of masonry that's going to absorb the water. Don't put it on plywood. I have some examples of what happens when you put it on plywood or in coffee cups. You've got to maintain this breathability. That's why we don't use coffee cups, plywood, plastic, Petri dishes, or bonding agents. They all change the color. I'm trying to make this about the same height as that one. We'll straighten this up in a little while. I just want to get enough on there now. So we can look at it and shape it up later. So we get rid of this one. Let's make up the next one. So I'm going to change this a little bit. Mix number 2. Is 8 parts S1 LS, 2 parts S2 LS. On site, you don't need to use anything this big. You can use a tablet, but the people that do these things need to keep records. They need to write it down, not on a piece of scrap cardboard, a notebook that they keep for this purpose, so they always have it, they can refer back to it. Too many guys on the scaffold write it down on something and then forget it or forget where they put it. Put it in a notebook. So let's use this one again 8 times. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8. Kind of like a cooking show, isn't it? Except I don't have any of them already finished. 1, 2. Eight parts and 2 parts. Okay, here we go again. always turn the bucket on the side, especially on a 5-gallon pail. It's just easier to mix this way. You can see it. It's not as much pressure on you as this way. You can watch it. Turn the pail every now and then. Okay. Peanut butter coat is nothing but this. The mix with some extra water. There's a big difference in the brown in this one. Just with the one extra part of the browner one of the two, this one, it's making that much of a difference already. When we do samples on site, we always do them on stone, just like this. It's adjacent to this. You're not carrying it around in a puck or in a coffee cup. This way you can really see it when it dries. It's easier to make a choice. Now, let's do number 3. Number 3 is 7 parts. S1 LS and 3 of S2 LS. One, 2, 7. 3 of those. So it's better to have this too dry. It's a lot easier to add a little more water than it is to go back and measure out another scoop of each one of those. Still too dry, a little bit. That looks good. Let's try it. Peanut butter coat again. I started calling this a peanut butter coat 35 years ago. The reason I did is because when you say slurry coat, people think of a brush and a very thin coat. The problem with that is it dries out too fast. When you put the material on top of this peanut butter coat, it's going to be while it's still wet. You can wet it more if it dries out, that's okay, but it has to be wet for this to work right like it's supposed to. I'm going to put a little bit more on here. You can make these as big as you want. It doesn't have to be this. I'm just trying to use the space that we have here. You can make them bigger or smaller. For me to see the colors better, it needs to be a little bit big. And it helps a lot by having it right here. Okay. Maybe a little bit more. Now, we can go back and start shaping these a little bit. When I do this, I never go straight down. Angle it this way a little bit so it doesn't break the thing loose. The last thing, and then we'll let these dry, is to scrape the face of these. That's the way we normally finish a repair, scraping, because it gives you the texture that you want that's closer to this. If someone trowels it, like stucco or plaster, it's going to be too smooth, it's not going to match. That's what usually causes crazing on projects, because just finishing. Finish like this, it makes it too smooth, like a brick or terracotta. If you finish it by scraping off some of the excess after it's set for a little while, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or an hour, depends on the temperature of the stone, the wind, but when it scrapes, falls off, we want it to fall off the tool. See where this is still sticking? It's okay. I typically wait a little bit longer, because right now, if you see this up close, it looks a little bit like a clay texture. We want it to look like stone. So I'll come back to these and scrape them, clean them up a little bit. Then take a sponge. These we send to people. This is part of a big sponge. We just cut them into small pieces. This is all you need for cleanup. Cleanup's important, because you're going to have a halo down here where the mortar's gotten on this if we don't clean it. And this is a closed cell sponge, not a natural sponge, so it doesn't hold too much water. It's not going to run down and ruin the repair if you're working over top of it. Clean this up carefully. And do it again. If you have somebody that's careless with this, what happens a lot of times, they use the wrong sponge, too much water, or they're careless and they swipe at this indiscriminately. What happens is you will melt the edge of that repair. The stone will be out a little bit in front of the repair, and you see it in the sun. It's going to leave a little bit of a line there, and there's no reason to have it. Just clean it up. We say clean it up at least 3 passes with clean water. And then it might as well look perfect as to look like an amateur did it. Cleanup's important. I'll come back to these and scrape the face of them in a little while once they've set up. We'll look at these again next week, see if any of them are a close match. If none of them are good enough, we'll take the closest one and do this again. Repeat this process until we get a good color match. Thanks for watching. Okay, it's been 3 days since we put these sample patches on to try to adjust the color. If you remember, we started with the S1LS just to show you that what to do in case your colors don't match. So to change this so that it matches better, we chose 3 other shades of brown patching material, and came up with what I thought might help the colors. What we did was make these three. You see mix number 1 was 9 parts of the S1LS, 1 part of S2, which is the center one. You can see the difference in the colors. We showed you this before. Mix number 2 is adding an extra part of S2, and mix number 3 was adding 3 parts of S2. So now if you look at it, you've got some color choices. You could add more. You can do as many as you want. I always put them next to the stone because it's easier to see the right colors. Everybody here has chosen number 3. I've got the numbers on top here. Always important to do this or make a diagram on site. But you can see what I did here. I numbered them 1, 2, and 3 here. So now, if you choose number 3, it could be number 2. Just remember, wait long enough for the color to settle down before you make a choice. A lot of people choose the next day, well, there's still moisture in it, so you might not have the color match you want. Wait long enough, put your samples on ahead of time. Always put them on stone, not on plywood or anything else, and give them time to dry. And then if you chose 3, but 3 needs to be a little darker, a little lighter, you can adjust it. So there's 1, 2, and 3. We've all chosen 3. Now you want to turn this into a larger mix. And if it's not a good color match here, you think it's a little bit too dark, you're better off for it to be a little bit too dark because it's going to continue to dry and cure. It's going to lighten up. Dark patches, not drastically darker, but patches that are a little too dark are exactly what you want. Dark repairs don't show up on a building. These are only under a microscope because you just put them on. You're looking at them close up. They're fresh. As you go around the building, there will be different shades of stone. You may need more than one color. You can make them like this, as many as you want. And then make 2, 3, or 4 batches, depending on the variations in the stone if you want. Now it's time to ramp it up into a bucket mix or a half a bucket mix. Make sure that you follow this ratio. Shouldn't let the guys get in a hurry. We've put some of the material into this pail just to show you. What we do with this is use that ratio. But if the old days, when you used to make a mortar mix, the guys used shovels. Well, shovels are inaccurate. You lose count. Half of it falls off the shovel, or one shovel's got twice as much in it. To be sure of what you're doing, we just do that. That's all you need. And then you're accurate. Get your 7 parts to 3 parts of this and use whatever size container you want. It can be, won't be that one. It can be tablespoons, can be cups, can be anything. Keep good records. Go back to this, make sure that it's accurate, and get whatever color you want. It's easy. We're going to do the next one on brownstone. It's the same process, but we thought we'd include one on brownstone because there's so much of it. People are doing so much of it. We want to do that. That'll be included. Thanks for watching.